Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something really quite unique.
Definitely unique.
It's a source text that's, well, incredibly ambitious, maybe even revolutionary. It outlines a whole framework completely self-contained for post-colonial success.
And it's grounded, quite literally, in a specific place, kenema district, Sierra Leone, built from the soil up.
Yeah, that grounding is key. So if you, the listener, are thinking in terms of, GDP, foreign investment, the usual development metrics.
You really have to park those for this discussion.
Completely.
The source centers on the Delta T22 framework. That's the double transverse transjective quadratic.
Yeah.
It sounds complex, and it is. It's described as a blueprint for Afro-theo-ontological engineering.
Right. And just that phrase alone tells you, okay, this isn't your standard policy paper or development study.
Not even close.
So our task today really is translation. We've got this very specialized language, lots of neologisms, and we need to unpack it. We need to figure out how the system works, how it measures success through things like relational coherence, endurance, covenant.
Instead of just economic output. And it blends this like high philosophy with really low-tech humanism.
That's the contrast, isn't it? Afro-theo-ontological engineering meets, as the text says, low modernity's dust and breath.
Exactly. It's that fusion, the spiritual, the philosophical, the architectural, they're all meant to be one thing. It's applied humanism, anchored right there in the hands, the breath, the soil.
And the absolute core idea, the definition we need to grasp from the start, this Delta T22 framework, it isn't about recovering from colonization in a straight line.
No, it rejects that. The idea is that the injury, the trauma, gets metabolized, incorporated, and then continuously repaired through a kind of rhythmic, self-sustaining process.
They call it sacramental immanence.
Right. The sacred isn't somewhere else, in a church building separate from life. It's in the everyday actions, particularly the act of maintenance. The house itself, the language they use, the way the economy works, it's all a theological act.
Okay, so let's dig into that central mechanism, the Delta T22. Double transverse transjective quadratic. It sounds incredibly theoretical, like geometry class. But how does it actually, work on the ground in kenema? What does it look like day to day?
Well, what's really interesting is how the geometry, the theory, maps directly onto their philosophy of time and history.
Okay.
So conventional post-colonial thinking, it often looks for linear progress, right? A straight line moving away from the colonial past, moving towards some idea of a modern future.
Recovery.
Exactly. Delta T22 just throws that out. It says that straight line inherently accepts the fracture, the break that colonization caused.
So if it's not a straight line, what is this transjective looping they talk about? Is it like specific rituals or schedules? How does it loop?
It's described more as a continuous metabolism, like breathing. The system works through this looping, where two main axes are constantly interacting, breathing through each other, you could say.
Okay, two axes.
Yeah, the reverted axis, and it's the connection to the past, ancestral knowledge, memories, techniques, the old covenantal agreements.
Right.
And then the inverted axis that's looking towards the future. Engineered hope, innovation, the solutions needed for tomorrow. But crucially, they're not separate points on a timeline.
They interrecurse. They metabolize cognition into covenant. That's the phrasing.
That's the phrasing. That means they constantly pull the ancestral wisdom forward to deal with future challenges, but also refine that wisdom through present action. It stops the past from just being nostalgia.
So the past and future aren't sequential, they're simultaneous, like two lungs breathing together.
That's a great analogy. It's a closed circuit, constantly repairing itself. And importantly, this looping means the system doesn't need to look outside for that linear escape route.
Right.
The one usually pays with development aid or foreign capital.
Yeah. The goal isn't external approval or hitting external targets.
Exactly. The goal, the outcome, is what they call kinemesis.
Okay, another key term, kinemesis. If it's not progress as we know it, how is it different from just, say, survival or even stagnation?
That's a crucial distinction. Kinemesis is defined as this equilibrium, yes, but it's born from ancestral reciprocity and this constant self-repair through covenantal rhythm. It's homeostasis, but it's dynamically sustained.
Okay, so it requires energy.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Stagnation implies decay is setting in. Kinemesis is the continuous active effort to keep everything in relational alignment between people, with the land, with the spiritual dimension. Success isn't measured by growth, but by the integrity of their relationships, the humidity balance in the house walls, the quality of the shared work.
It's an internal measure, a kind of sovereign breath.
Perfectly put.
And this links to the quadrature circulation, the four axes that keep the system moving. These aren't just abstract concepts. The source says they map onto four operational planes, four daily covenantal gestures.
And they have to happen simultaneously. That's the engineering part. Balance. If one axis weakens, the whole system, the whole ontology is at risk.
Okay, let's tick them off. First, the ultra-axis.
That's faith and assent, expressed through prayer. It's the metaphysical grounding, acknowledging where breath and inspiration come from.
Second, the extra-axis.
Kintext and communal. That's the social sphere shared labor, expansion of the community's capacity. Who are we building with? How do we grow together?
Third, the meta-axis.
The loop mind. Reflection, repairing. This is the feedback loop, the check-in. Are our actions actually aligning with the Delta T22 model? Does it maintain what they call perennial low modernity?
Okay, the self-correction mechanism.
Exactly.
And fourth, the intra-axis.
Soil sense and embodied. Anchored in rest, intimacy, the wisdom of the body, the feel of the earth. This pulls the high theory right back down into the physical rhythm of work and life.
And the kicker is, success demands all four modes are present at once.
Yes. They explicitly call it a refusal to outsource transcendence. You can't just say, build the house physically, extra axis, and then separately pray it stays standing, ultra axis.
The building is the prayer.
The building is the prayer, the spiritual work is the material work, and vice versa.
Which makes perfect sense of the architecture itself. This Kenemagorian mansion, 3,400 square feet, those 14-foot walls, it embodies this idea of the aesthetic of flatness.
It's a statement. A physical argument, really. The source frames it as dissent against what it calls the colonial addiction to elevation metaphors.
Growth, scaling up, rising above, all that vertical language.
Exactly. The Kenemagorian house, by focusing on the horizontal spread, the continuity across the ground, rather than stacking upwards, it performs a kind of leveling.
So the flatness isn't about being basic or small, it's a political choice against that competitive, bigger is better scaling game.
Precisely. Flatness becomes political, spiritual resonance. It's like leveling thought itself until it touches the dust, but without losing the transcendent dimension. Those high 14-foot walls, they're not about reaching for the sky, they're about creating breathable space, shade, reinforcing that horizontal connection between people and the land.
The house becomes a kenemagora, a field organ, translating the quadratic into actual lived geometry.
Yeah, and then you see that fusion in the building process described. The mason with the trowel on the laterite wall. The source says the smell of the wet clay after rain becomes like a peer-reviewed citation.
Wow.
The theory has to become epistemic cement. It has to be breathable lime, sweat, shade. The building has to physically perform the argument it represents.
Okay, so the house is the physical blueprint. Then the language they forge must be the grammar holding it all together. Which brings us to section 2. Etymological hybridization. They call it socio-semantic repair.
This part is really fascinating. The text describes it as a postdoctoral ritual of religaturing tongues.
Religaturing, like tying back together what was broken.
Exactly. Colonization didn't just take land and resources. It fractured language. It fractured meaning. The source argues that English, specifically, imposed nouns for owning things. It froze the world into static objects you could possess and extract value from.
Right, objectification.
So the repair has to bring back motion, relation. This Kenemagorian language, it focuses on verbs for belonging, relating, doing. It forges connections where the imperial grammar created separation.
It's not just code switching or borrowing words.
No, it's deeper. They call it transduction. It's about allowing that ancestral resonance, that deep history, to flow into how they speak now, without losing the meaning, the semantic weight. It's linguistic sovereignty, making sure every word carries the community's history and its future commitments.
Okay, let's get concrete. These neologisms are crucial. They're like the load-bearing beams. Let's start with plela soda.
Plela soda roughly translates to joyous verb making. It's about linguistic craft as a form of communal healing. The act of making and using words together is joyful, therapeutic. And crucially, it connects theology to infrastructure.
How does word-making become infrastructure? Can you give an example?
Okay, imagine they're planning the next stage of building. In a Western model, that's spreadsheets, budgets, logistics.
Right.
Here, plela soda means the community has to craft the need, the plan, into a shared, joyous utterance, maybe a song, a collective phrase. It has to affirm not just we need bricks, but the joy of laying the bricks together. The language itself ensures the planning stays tied to the communal spirit, the healing rhythm.
So if the discussion lacks that joy, that plela soda, the plan itself is flawed.
Fundamentally flawed.
Yeah.
It hasn't passed the coherence test. The language holds the emotion accountable.
Amazing. Okay, what about staminord? Strength.
Staminordor. It blends stamina and organism. So strength isn't just individual muscle power. It's the resonance between the body, the tool being used, and the faith behind the action, all working together as one organism.
The source gives that example of the mason murmuring it while working.
Yeah, it's incredibly visceral. When they murmur staminord, they're not just saying, I'm strong or I can keep going.
They're asserting something bigger.
Much bigger. It's like saying, my arm, this hammer, my breath, the ancestor watching over me, the community needing this wall, we are all aligned, working as one entity. The word itself performs that integration.
It turns pain or exhaustion into collective endurance, not just personal depletion.
Exactly. It integrates the labor back into the spiritual and relational field. It's repair against that history of purely extractive labor.
And that connects back to the first section, flatha theology, or flatter utra theological poetics.
Right. This is the operational practice of sacramental immanence. It's the radical leveling, refusing to separate the sacred from the ordinary, the everyday.
So where Western traditions might put the sacred up there, transcendent, separate from the messy work.
Flat theology says no. Theology happens in the material work. Mixing cement while humming a covenant song is theology. Patching the roof with care is a sacred act.
The poetics aren't just fancy words, they're the circulatory system.
It ensures that theology isn't just about the place, it's built into the place. Prayer becomes wiring, plastering, singing. It avoids those imposed hierarchies of holy versus mundane work.
And this leads to the idea that the language itself needs maintenance, density. It's not lightweight.
Absolutely not. Density is maintenance. The source is clear. Each syllable has to carry onsetic, load-bearing weight.
Like bricks of meaning.
Exactly. If the words are flimsy, the whole structure of meaning collapses under pressure. These hybrid verbs are like structural rebar. They have to hold up.
So a word has to justify itself within the system. It can't just be reactive chatter. The whole thing is an onsetic instrumentation.
Right. It resists that kind of academic discourse that only exists to critique or react, often getting lost in abstraction. This language is instrumental. It's designed to do things, build reality, forge covenants. It's a tool. If a word doesn't help maintain the house, metaphorically and literally, it gets discarded.
That pragmatism, that focus on action, leads directly into the next section, doesn't it? Joy as infrastructure, the JAOA protocol.
Yes, joy as infrastructure. Afro-optimist-oriented accelerationism. This is where they really flip the script on despair and progress.
It sounds counterintuitive. Joy as infrastructure.
It's presented as an antidote to historical trauma, to the weight of the past. JAOA refutes despair, not by pretending it doesn't exist, but by actively metabolizing joy into rhythmic energy. Joy becomes the fuel, the engineering material.
So joy powers the solar panel upkeep, underpins the market chatter.
That's the idea. It's woven into the domestic theology of everyday life, like sweeping. It's the energy source.
Now, accelerationism usually has very different connotations in, say, Western tech circles. Rapid scaling, disruption, sometimes even embracing collapse.
Right, often towards extraction or abstraction. This is different. They call it prometotopic momentum.
Prometotopic.
Yeah, it means the disciplined relational perpetuation of hope as infrastructure. The acceleration isn't towards some abstract global endpoint or profit target. It's acceleration towards intimacy, towards deepening and quickening the relationships within the community.
So the communal labor, laying bricks together, sharing food, fetching water, that is the acceleration.
That's the physical act of accelerating relational density. Every shared meal isn't just sustenance. It's a structural investment in their coherence.
It's endogenous acceleration, fueled from within.
Exactly. And this deep commitment to low-tech humanism shapes how they bring in high technology. It's not seen as a savior coming from outside.
Technology as simple friend, that's the term.
Yes, covenanting with technology through neo-tribal humility. Treating it as a partner, not a master.
Let's talk specifics. Starlink is mentioned. How do they integrate something like satellite internet with this philosophy?
It's a great example. Starlink's orbit isn't seen as foreign surveillance or intrusion. It's framed as a stellar covenant, a predictable rhythm in the sky they can relate to.
And they wash the dish?
Weekly, ritual maintenance. The physical dish becomes, in their terms, a metallic ancestor. They domesticate the technology, the signal. It arrives as breath, as enabling information, not as something that dominates or creates dependency.
And artificial intelligence, even more potentially disruptive. They call it the Sunsum synthetic companion.
Sunsum means spirit or soul in Incan languages. So it's positioned as a spiritual technological ally, a pneumatological companion,
A breathing companion.
in a sense. And the key distinction the source makes is that this AI listens without calculating in the typical efficiency-driven way. Its role is to translate human intention into sustainable coordination. It doesn't impose optimization metrics.
So it's deliberately designed not to quantify relationships or calculate souls for efficiency.
Precisely. It acts as a humility amplifier, supporting the elder's wisdom, helping with pattern recognition maybe, facilitating fair resource circulation within the kinship stewardship collective.
Yeah.
But it's not an authority. Western AI often seeks prediction and control. This seeks relational harmony.
It serves kinemesis, not external profit or efficiency that might break that four-axis balance.
Exactly.
This careful integration shapes their whole vision of the future, the prometopia of maintenance. How does that contrast with typical utopias?
Well, most techno-utopias imagine some great break, right? A singularity, a revolution, maybe even a collapse, followed by a radically new beginning.
Right, rupture then rebirth.
Prometopia is radical because it says the future is maintenance, not rupture. It's a commitment to the enduring middle, the ongoing work.
Fusing the endgame, the eschatology, with daily repair.
Yes. Success becomes the sustained postponement of collapse through joyous effort. Those small acts, tightening a roof panel, patching plaster, fixing the solar array, they aren't just chores.
They're theological acts against entropy.
Beautifully put. The source argues that the low-tech hand, doing constant rhythmic repair fueled by Play soda, is the highest form of acceleration.
Okay.
That effort is the infrastructure.
Okay, so if JOOA is the engine and rhythm, then kinematric actualism is how they measure if it's working. Section 4. And again, we're leaving conventional metrics behind.
Completely. Western systems rely on quantifiable data, usually money. Kinematric actualism measures the endurance of the relation itself.
How do you measure endurance or coherence? It sounds abstract.
They make it tangible, material. It's verified through relational attestation within the community. That off-grid house, sustained by the community's covenant, produces a surplus not of profit, but of coherence.
And the examples.
The source gives examples like, every prayer spoken over the water storage tanks validates the system's integrity. Every nail hammered with intention becomes an epistemic unit, a piece of knowledge. The economy isn't about cash flow. It's about the circulation of durability, the liquidity of faith.
So if faith weakens, the system falters materially, like the water tanks run dry.
That's the implication. It's not a logistical failure first, it's a failure of relational coherence.
This kind of measurement requires a governance structure to match.
Yeah.
Flat governance.
Exactly, based on flat ontology. Decision-making is distributed, polycentric. It explicitly bypasses the centralized state or NGO structures.
And the main unit is the kinship stewardship collective.
Right, they flat govern. They use the existing kinship network, the established lines of family and community connection for coordination and resource allocation. It's kin stewarding, treating resources as a shared inheritance managed through relational trust, not bureaucracy.
Okay, flat governance sounds appealing, but what about power dynamics? How do they stop influential figures or families from just taking over within that kinship network? Where's the check?
That's where empirical triangulation comes in. It's the built-in truth validation system. Because power is meant to be flat, distributed, it can't easily centralize.
How does triangulation work?
Any significant proposal or decision has to be validated across 3 domains before it's considered true or sound. It needs attestation from 1, the family kinship network, 2, the ecology material reality, and 3, the spirit metaphysical dimension.
So give me an example. Say someone proposes a new farming technique. How would it be triangulated?
Okay, good example.
Let's say it promises higher yields.
Right. So first, family kinship. Does it align with their shared labor rhythms? Does it encourage cooperation or individual hoarding? The collective has to attest to its social fit.
Okay.
Second, ecology. What does the land say? If they try it and the soil gets depleted quickly, or it attracts pests or harms the water source, the ecology itself has refuted the proposal. Material attestation fails.
The earth provides feedback.
Direct feedback. And third, spirit. Do the spiritual elders confirm it aligns with ancestral wisdom with flat theology? Does it respect the balance?
It's a holistic validation. Knowledge has to be grounded, agricultural almost. Theory gets tested by the soil immediately.
Exactly. Theoretical failure shows up materially or relationally fast.
And the day-to-day running of this is micro-regulatory rationality.
Yeah, low-tech governance. Oral accountability replaces abstract bureaucracy.
Rice counted by voice, cement remembered by trust.
It sounds simple, maybe even primitive to an outsider, but the source presents it as an advanced relational calculus. Oral accountability, because it's distributed and constantly reaffirmed in relationship, eliminates the surplus opacity, the hidden layers where corruption thrives in complex bureaucracies.
Policy becomes choreography.
Yes, a shared rhythm, understood by everyone, flattened across the community, not hidden away in some administrative office.
This brings us to the final layer, the internal, the psychological. Section 5, psychotheopoetic engineering, repairing the self to fuel the whole system.
Right. And again, it diverges sharply from Western models. Delta T22 takes psychoanalysis out of the purely internal, introspective space and makes it exopsychomaterial.
Exopsychomateriality. So psychic energy gets discharged outwards.
Into the communal fabric, into the material world. Western psychoanalysis often focuses on the internal conflict, id, ego, superego. This framework replaces that Freudian triad with their own, kin, soil, spirit.
The psyche isn't just in the head.
No, it interacts constantly with breath, humidity, kinship relations, the physical environment.
And this leads to architectural therapy. How does desire literally get plastered into a wall, make that visceral for us?
Well, think about the context of post-colonial trauma repression, loss of agency. The intense, shared physical labor of building this large protective house becomes the outlet. The desire for safety, for beauty, for stability, it's channeled directly through the hands applying the plaster. The wall embodies that collective yearning and effort.
So the material absorbs the psychic tension.
That's the idea. Repression isn't just an internal knot. It becomes the tangible shade provided by the roof overhang, protecting the community from the harsh sun, symbolizing protection from historical exposure. Sublimation, turning raw urges into something higher, becomes roof integrity. Laying stones, strengthening the foundation, becomes an act of constructing forgiveness, building psychic resilience.
The house is the therapist, the veranda is the couch.
And the rhythm of the hammer is the interpretation, perhaps.
And the analysis also happens through sound acoustic hermeneutics.
Yet the analytic session unfolds publicly, in the shared soundscape. Psychoanalytic insight isn't found in quiet confessionals, but in the communal noise. The pounding of cassava, the hammering on roofs, the mothers murmuring stories over cooking fires.
These aren't just background sounds.
No, they are the data, the empirical evidence of relational health.
How do they measure coherence through sound?
By tonal alignment. Is the rhythm shared? Is the soundscape harmonious? Does it have play soda? Or is it discordant? If the cassava pounding is jarringly out of sync with the mason's humming, it suggests a psychic discoherence in the community. The environment constantly broadcasts their relational truth.
And this is all grounded, again, by the intra-axis somatic experience.
Yes, the physical reality of living off-grid, working with the hands, the soil it provides that deep, visceral sense of belonging. They soil ground the whole thing. Tactile knowledge is prioritized. The smell of wet earth, the feel of the tools, these aren't just incidental details. They are confirmations of truth, of being connected. The body is constantly engaged in maintenance, so it can't really separate its internal state from the material reality.
And all this ongoing work, physical, linguistics, psychological, culminates in aphrometanoia, collective transfiguration.
This is presented as the highest stage, the realization. Aphrometanoia means continual conversion, continual turning, through the repetition of these procedures, especially maintenance. It's embracing the fact that the work is never truly finished.
And that's the strength, not a weakness.
Exactly. The goal isn't a final cure, an end to problems, a perfect utopia. The analytic mind here seeks durational stability.
Durational stability.
A sustained ability to oscillate between lack and plenitude, challenge and response, seeing it as a creative covenant, not a sign of failure. They accept paradox as permanent.
So post-colonial success, in this view, isn't reaching economic parity or ending all struggle.
No. It's the capacity to sustain paradox, to hold the tensions without collapsing. The colonial fracture hasn't been erased. It's been metabolized into a self-generating rhythm that doesn't need outside validation to know it exists and functions.
Okay. That is a massive conceptual shift. So, wrapping up, what does this Delta T22 framework really mean for us? Perhaps listening from systems obsessed with growth and external metrics.
I think it demonstrates a transition from a theoretical hypothesis about success to a lived, functioning ontology, a whole way of being, the sheer complexity of it, the language, governance, psychology, it's all sustained internally through relational recursion, not by pulling resources from outside or relying on heavy machinery.
It makes maintenance itself seem like the most radical innovation.
It really does. Maintenance through rhythm and joy.
So the final takeaway, this isn't a model you can just copy and paste elsewhere.
No, the source emphasizes it's a metabolism to be inhabited. It's specific to its place in its history. It operates in perpetual maintenance, that joyous eschatology. Empire, colonialism, its residue has been fully metabolized, turned into fertilizer for thought, material for repair.
Success is living, repairing, celebrating, without needing to constantly refer back to the injury.
That's the core of it. And maybe we can leave the listener with this final thought from the source, which kind of encapsulates everything. The house stands because meaning circulates. Meaning circulates because the house stands.
That's powerful.
It really makes you ponder, what does it mean if your knowledge system, your epistemology, is literally measured by how evenly your house breathes, by the wind flow? What if knowledge truly is agricultural, needing water, patience, observation to be harvested? And maybe, just maybe, how could you apply that idea of low technology sustaining high philosophy somewhere in your own life?